June 1st, Rotoball Patch Compound. We got a lot to talk about. Let's get to it. 1992.5 Pierpont. I'll show you an issue I found today after coming home from work. Looks like I have some bleaching, some brown areas on some of the oldest leaves, almost like it's sunburn. We haven't had any conditions to cause any leaves to sunburn. I've noticed it on this plant, and we have a total of 4 leaves that are affected. The largest, oldest leaves from what I can gather. Same thing's noted on the 1965.5 Rotoball. From what I can tell, it doesn't appear to be fungal. I put it under magnification, heavy magnification, trying to look for any type of mycelium or stalk or anything like that. It just looks like we're bleached out on chlorophyll. It doesn't appear to be burn. Traditionally, burn is on new foliage that just gets a little hot, wilts out, and it'll burn, and it'll turn crispy. May not affect the whole leaf. These leaves still seem to be healthy, just devoid of chlorophyll in some select areas. Don't know what it is. You don't know all the answers. Talk to my boys, they don't know what the answer is either. We all have our guesses. But the general consensus is hit this with a nice fungicide. I'm going to use my backpack sprayer and some Zonix, which is a nice biological fungicide, and just monitor it. And I'll monitor it by picking out a couple leaves and taking photographs every day for the next 2 or 3 days. And I'll do it with some healthier leaves that are older as well, and just see if I note any progression. If I see any progression, then we'll start removing some leaves and maybe try to get more serious with fungicide rotation. I hate this nonsense, just the way it goes. Standing down here at the 1992.5, I just got done burying vines on this plant for the day. It's been about 5 days since the last time I buried vines. You can see soil covering the nodes. Can't really see a whole lot of vine, just see mostly leaves. Now, I don't bury the whole vine, I try to bury just the nodes. Plant looks nice and healthy. I have a couple dead leaves that I think it might have been UV damage, not for certain, but probably 2 of them is going to come out of there probably today. But before I got on to burying the 1965.5, I wanted to bring you up here and show you the difference of what it looks like before burying and after burying. So this plant is going to get some vines buried today. You can see where we stopped last time. We just hadn't developed out here yet, and we'll play catch up. Some of the vines further down there didn't even exist when I buried this last time. But this plant, when it's all said and done, will look just like our 1992.5 down there. Same thing, a couple of our early leaves have what I would probably think to be UV damage or something. I'm not seeing it in later plants, or later leaves rather. Do have a little bit of burn there. That's normal. This does have Tiger King genetics in it, so it will burn. It will burn. That's the reason we have 3 auxiliary tables, including our normal tip table out there on the end. Pollinated the 1965.5 Rotoball this morning. It's a 5-lober, sitting at about 10 feet. It has 10 side vines behind it, which is not nearly enough. Went ahead and pollinated it, crossed it with a 1992.5 over there, just to see if it'll set or if it'll take. I do believe that pollinating ahead of what your intended pollination is, so I want to have one further out on the main, obviously, to have more secondaries to push it, but starting pollination now may kind of get the plant in the gear to start setting fruit. So maybe hormone related. That's a good question. I don't have any papers or studies on it, but this is what I've done since I started in the beginning, and it works very nicely for me. Standing up at the top of the key, the main patch, Rotoball Patch Compound. Looking at the 1965.5, it was buried yesterday, fully buried. Overnight, looks like the vines, every tip grew anywhere between 8 to 10 inches. The main probably put on 12. We've had amazing weather. Of course, the fence is fully up, the electric's up, It is not electrified yet. Ah! Sorry. The 1992.5, same scenario. We buried this gal yesterday, and I bury them pretty close. I bury them up to, I don't want to say the tip, but I bury them a lot closer than probably what you should, the nodes. And we put on another 8 to 10 inches about every vine. We've had a little bit of rain today. Wasn't really expecting rain. I'm at the point now to where I'm watering about 250 gallons a day, and it seems like a lot, and it is a lot if you're going to put it just on these plants. But I water with a sprinkler head, and it does a half moon from the 1965 down to the 1992.5. I have also placed sprinkler heads on the corner T-posts that I can hook into. Easy, quick disconnects if I want to target specific plants, if I feel like one's a little too dry. I've been running this water with a timer while I'm at work. It kicks on at approximately 12 p.m., kicks off about 45 minutes to 50 minutes later, just depending on how hot the day is. I try to gauge on how long I want to run it. We did have a pumpkin open up today on the 1965.5. Way down there, you can see that gal. I went ahead and pollinated it with the 1992.5. I'm not going to keep that pumpkin. There's 10 side vines behind it. Like I said before, I do that to try to get the plant in reproductive mode as opposed to just complete veg mode. Maybe change up the hormone pattern. I did till below the plants. I've had quite the volunteer cover crop down deep there, and as the mains are tracing closer and closer to the far end of the patch, I thought, it's time to bust up that soil and turn over that volunteer cover crop. It did dry out a little bit today. I'd say I probably had about a 70% kill rate. I'll have to go back in there and till it again. It's out of the root zone of the plants, so we can get away with a till. You don't want to till right next to the plants. A good rule of thumb that I go by, that Rick Jolivet and myself talked about, is you have a plant that is 15 foot long, vegetative. How long do you think those roots are from that stump? So in essence, we could be standing on roots. So you don't want to till any closer than what your longest portion is, if that makes sense. Get in there and hand weed, use a hula hoe. This stuff up here will be hula hoed. I do that as I bury. You can see how clean we are directly around the plant, and you get a little further away. So you don't have to do it all the time, all at once. I think that our growth has been absolutely outstanding. Hot days with proper moisture. This time of year, I keep my plants very, very wet. They can handle it. Later in the year, I will dry them up a little bit. Scott Baywatch gives me a hard time for letting them get a little too dry, but we each have our own styles, and to be honest with you, he's probably right. I'm probably letting them get a little too dry towards the end of the year, but I try to push a longer aged fruit, try to get to that 110, 120 days after pollination. So if you can keep things healthy and you keep things dry to some extent, you have less chance of mildew or any disease setting in. The fence is pretty basic. It is like a tennis type of material that they use to put on chain link fence for privacy or for tennis courts. This is a 3-foot section. And this is what I've used, 3 foot in the landscaping fabric for years. So I went ahead and did the same length for our wind fence with this material. The electric is just your standard electric fence, and I run it to where the wire is continuous, and I take it down every year and I put it right back up. And it's all secured with T-posts, zip ties, clips, anything you can locally source that's just easy to deal with. Made myself a little cheapy easy gate. I have 2 gates. I have one here close to the top of the key, and I have one at the far corner down there. You can see the double T-post. So it gives me 2 access entry points. So whatever area I'm working on, I can gain pretty easy access. The 1965.5 rotoball under canopy looks good and clean, properly buried. There's some of the UV possible damage we have on the first couple leaves. Like it's pointed out before, we have a little bit of leaf burn over there next to the table. These holy leaves, I believe to be from splatter, from heavy torrential downpour, getting on the leaves. This area of soil, which is mostly clay, tends not to necessarily absorb any fertilizer. It just holds it, and splashback gets on those leaves and will burn those leaves. Saw the same thing on the ginger plant last season on this left-hand side. I guess I'll see it again this season. I think really the remedy for that is probably to try to get some compost, maybe some leaf compost, and just kind of cover the top of this soil, not till it in or mess with it. So it would be wise to get in there and kind of hula ho all the weeds out, do that, and see if that actually works. Oh, look who just showed up. It's the evening shift, getting ready to do some work. Not even my cat. Love that cat though, good cat. The 1992.5 Ed Pierpont. Stump looks to be about a $50 size. Plant's pushing an honest 17 foot. Obviously, back training to my first 5 secondaries on each plant, and that's the way I'm going to run it this year. I'm going to have 5 secondaries rolling back on this side, 5 secondaries rolling back on this side, and they'll trace around here and they'll fill in this voided area. I can get a little bit more length out of them that way, and don't have to have a wide plant. I can kind of have a long plant. So after the first 5 trace back, like I said, I'll have 1 to 2 on each side that'll trace outwards, just directly to the sides, and they'll be some of my shortest secondaries. As we have the plant progress further and we get a fruit set, and we're setting at approximately 20 to 22 secondaries between the stump and the actual fruit, I'll have another additional 4 to 5 secondaries on each side that will trace and fill in that far area. And eventually, with any luck, we'll have a pumpkin set somewhere about there. Good side angle shot to give you a better idea of the pattern. You can see these first 2 secondaries rolling. There's the 3rd secondary. It's going to start passing and coming right alongside the 4th and then the 5th. And I actually have room for them. There's the first 2. We'll have a 3rd one here, a 4th one here, and a 5th one here, which will give me a little space between the wind fence. Speaking of that wind fence, contacted by a buddy of mine, Jay Yo, and he said, Chris, be careful with that wind fence. He said it may hold some moisture. Of course, he's seen my patch in the past, and he knows that I use the landscaping fabric. His concern with this would hold a little bit more moisture and possibly cause some mildew issues or some mold issues. I try to keep a border, like I said, about 18 inches. Don't run my plants clear to it, but I do heed his warning. He's a smart cat and grows nice large fruit in a small area. So anytime anybody says something that makes sense, I definitely take their warning. Standing up here at the stop sign patch, just got done cleaning off some old worn out leaves of clone B and clone C. Went ahead and buried what would be considered the main vine clear up to pretty much the grow tip, which is out here. I do have a little small pumpkin on here. Looks like the size and shape of mama, or actually sibling, I guess, since it's a clone. Went ahead and buried the clone B over there, which is currently our stronger plant, and cleaned off some of its leaves as well. I'll move you on up around here to look at clone A, which was a bush. Man, she's a bushy gal. Well, I went ahead and trimmed the bush and made 1 growing tip, which is way out here. We had another growing tip there. It was probably stealing some juice from us. At this point, we'll go ahead and Put a little bit of mix over top of the area. Not really adding anything, but just some soil, sandy soil, which is actually a leaf compost. Let those nodes hopefully help root in just a touch. Not a ton, just enough. Not gonna hurt anything. This is probably still not gonna be our keeper, but we're gonna treat it like she is until she isn't. Clone B is kicking Clone C's butt. Clone A even looks halfway decent. But I think it's time for the one closest to the camera, Clone C, to get called. I'll go ahead and pull this gal up. Yeah, check out the roots. That's where we buried the other day. Nice taps. Gently try to pull up more of it. A little bit better taps, not bad. A little bit of tug back there. Never really rooted in heavy down here. So I think this is a good decision. We're a country mile from our Clone B, so I'm just gonna tug this guy out of the ground. All right, that's it. Take that. Clone C, Clone B still healthy and pretty and growing like a weed, yeah. Clone B is a respectable sized plant. Starting to do some secondary action in a few locations. I'll take it. Get a little bit more buried, take off that little baby fruit, and I think we might have something here, fellas. Here we are at the stop sign patch. Now, this is Clone B. Folks, she's taking off. If we can get some secondary production, we might have something here. Now the patch is pretty squirrely looking because it's kind of an experimental patch. It's the first year patch. Clone A is all right. She's gonna be going soon. Only reason she's still there is because I don't have this patch fully enclosed like I should. The hope, sink a couple more T-posts in, get a nice wind fence around this, put some electric up, do something along that nature, just like we have on our main patch. Get this where it's critter proof. I've seen a couple critters in the area, rabbits and such, and they can get in here and do some real damage. But until that happens, getting this patch set up the way it should be, I want to make sure that this plant is starting to get some secondaries on it. And of course, obviously, there's a nice, beautiful secondary, but we're getting a few other little guys. And I don't know if they're going to amount to much, but I'll try to keep them where they're not buried and they have the potential to shoot out. Did take the female pumpkin off of there. It's only going to steal juice from our plant. Right now we're vegetative state. We have to grow this plant to a decent enough size to try to set a fruit. We have plenty of size. I did order some shade fabric for this patch. I've never used shade fabric in my pumpkin growing endeavors, but with the 2350 genetics, and obviously this plant itself last year just would burn under the moonlight, I think it's prudent. So far it's done very well. Now I've kept it covered pretty nicely and I've pounded the nitrogen to it, but so far so good. Guys, this was a long one today. I hope I didn't wear you out. Appreciate you watching. Don't forget to hit the like, thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't. Come on now, if you're not subscribed yet, get your act together. But I always appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or ideas, hit me up. I'm open to thoughts and ideas. Everything that's good that I have is not always original. It's borrowed or stolen, flat out stolen. And I can thank a lot of people for great ideas and think, hey, that may work for me. And I hope that you can watch this and get something like that for yourself. But as always, holler at me, questions, comments. Otherwise, I'll catch you around. Growing big. Doc out. Settled in for the nighttime shift. Yeah, gonna catch me some pumpkin mice. You're right.